It seems today that all you see is people complaining about referees, umpires, whether it be basketball, baseball, football, it doesn't matter. There's a call they disagree with, they think it's rigged. And it sure doesn't help that FanDuel or DraftKings or whoever sportsbook is plastered at the beginning of the broadcast. If you think what we see today is bad, get ready. 1997, it's the National League Championship Series Game 5. It's the Atlanta Braves coming in to play the Florida Marlins. Series tied 2-2. Pivotal game, and you got Gregg as home plate umpire and Livan Hernandez starting the game for the Marlins.
NBC Sports presents the National League Championship Series.
Let's just get right into this. It's known as the Gregg game for a reason, because this is probably the worst called game you will ever see in your entire life. So this here all transpired in the first inning. You see Livan Hernandez toss at a curveball that's clearly not a strike. It is very far off the plate. And here's another one to Chipper Jones. This one a fastball, similarly egregiously outside, and Gregg is standing his ground, and he seems pretty happy with that call right there. And that's not it. Here comes Fred McGriff, another lefty, another fastball that is very obvious to anyone with two functional eyeballs. At this point, it's just ridiculous. The Braves already can tell, okay, this is how this game's going to go. And that's not it. There's a little bit more here as well. Another fastball, somehow even more outside than the last three. We mentioned the lefties, and that was really the killer for the Braves, because if you look at the lineup they trotted out, it features just three right-handed hitters. The switch hitters with the right-handed Livan Hernandez are going to bat from the left side, of course. And the Marlins, a bit luckier. The Gregg Maddux on the bump, so they have three guys hitting from the left-handed slot. So after seeing whatever that was from Gregg, surely superstar pitcher Gregg Maddux will throw outside as well. Nope. He throws an inside sinker, and he hits him. Although, I don't think it's fair. If you guys remember, we talked about the Ty France situation. This is pretty egregious. That's clearly sticking his knee out and also making no attempt to get out of the path of the pitch. That should be called. That is not legal. And here's where things get bad again. So Sheffield's in, and that pitch is not a strike, but for frame of reference, it should be, considering it was a strike in the other batter's box. And here's a lefty, and he throws an actual strike, but it's not called. So this is where people get the idea that this game was called in favor of the Marlins, and Bobby Bonilla's going to take a pitch right there, and the Marlins are going to get their first run of the ball game. Their lead wouldn't last for long. First batter, Michael Tucker, hits a home run to even the odds, tying the game 1-1. But that's enough baseball. Let's get back to the Gregg show. 60,000 people were in the stadium to see that man stand behind the plate and make it all about him. Once again, just an egregious fastball that clearly at any point is not a strike. Here we go again. It's just so frustrating. It'd be one thing, like Gregg Maddux, who had a deadly sinker, if these pitches were mind-bendingly breaking across the plate last second, it might be a ball, a close call. These were never strikes. Because I was not born yesterday, I know what I'll see in the comments section from a group of Gregg defenders and champion contrarians. Well, if that's the established strike zone, why don't they just swing? They are, quite often. They are swinging at these pitches so far out of the strike zone. You have Hall of Famers like Chipper Jones, Fred McGriff, all-stars like Ryan Klesko, Kenny Lofton, who are looking like absolute schmucks swinging at some of these pitches that today they would get made fun of for. These are pitches that Javier Baez gets dragged through the mud for taking a hack at. They have to, because otherwise, Gregg's going to call it a strike. And of course, the Braves aren't going to get anything going when it's either going to be a guaranteed strike or they can just hope to get the end of the bat on the baseball. And we'll wrap up the actual game here. That's Bobby Bonilla again. He had 3 hits. He was huge for the Marlins in this one. And if you saw that, he actually caught that ball. It's going to wind up being a double, but that's in his glove. Just the momentum and the impact from hitting the wall knocked it out. Tough play. Following that, Jeff Conine rips one right through the middle. That's going to be good enough to score Bobby Bonilla. And the Marlins take a 2-1 lead. Not much offense in this game, if you would believe it, with how the strike zone's being called. That it all winds up here. The bottom of the 9th, 2 outs. Hall of Famer Fred McGriff, Livan Hernandez in for the complete game. That's a garbage call. You'd hope that this doesn't happen right near the end. Here he is defensively swinging because he knows that's a called strike anyways. And probably the worst call in the entire game comes the last pitch of the entire game. And the Marlins win this one. They take the series lead 3-2. They'd wind up winning the next one and moving on to the World Series, winning it 1997, beating the Yankees. And you get a second look. It is just downright disgraceful to the game of baseball. And I wish they showed a little bit more of the Braves players in the broadcast. But what they did show, they were disgusted, and for good reason. Now, Eric Gregg clearly having an extremely wide strike zone for lefties on the outside, but for right-handed hitters, pretty similarly, and it favored the Marlins. You see a couple occasions right here where the calls just aren't just. One team throws a ball in one spot, it's a ball. The other team throws a ball in the same spot, and now it's a strike. So let's answer the question. Was this game rigged? Was there a conscious effort to have the Marlins be the winner? The Florida Marlins were a brand new team, introduced in 1993, and up to this point, they had not had a single winning season, and their attendance was declining. There is, at the least, a very clear understanding that if the Marlins were good, their attendance would go up, and a brand new team would start to prosper more. On the other hand, the Atlanta Braves were all but baseball royalty. In the 90s, it was really the Yankees in the American League and the Atlanta Braves in the National League. They only won a single World Series, but they were in it constantly. They were a dominant force, and they were on TBS. They were on cable. If you had cable television, you could watch the Atlanta Braves. Also, as we pointed out, the Braves clearly have a lot of lefties. And in this game, most of the egregious calls happened with a left-handed batter with an outside pitch, whether it be fastball, breaking ball, it didn't matter. Unless you threw it into the dugout, Eric Gregg was probably going to call it a strike. And all that has led me to this conclusion. No. I don't think the game was rigged. I don't think Bud Selig wrote a letter to Eric telling him to make sure that the team from Florida winds out on top. Let's make the home crowd happy. I think what it is, the reason why the Marlins got more calls than the Braves reacted. There was numerous very bad calls in the first inning, and the players were giving it to Eric. They were looking back. They were questioning his calls. And across all eras of baseball, one thing remains consistent. Umpires have fair skin. They do not like when their authority is questioned, and I think he held a grudge the remainder of the game. All in all, this has got to be the worst umpiring performance I think you'll ever see, and certainly it is the worst that I've ever seen. And I'm not attempting to lick the cleats of the current umpires in Major League Baseball, but compared to back then, it is a hell of a lot more consistent. And to wrap things up, talk about Eric Gregg's story. This was the last postseason that he would ever work. He resigned in 1999 as part of a labor union action in hopes that Major League Baseball would restructure umpiring contracts a little bit more in their favor. All in all, MLB chose to accept resignations, and they brought back a handful of guys who did resign, but not Eric Gregg. In fact, a member of the United States House of Representatives wrote a letter urging that Bud Selig bring back Eric Gregg, but Bud refused. So let me know in the comments section, what do you guys think about this? Is there a worse game that you've seen called, whether it be baseball, basketball, tiddlywinks? And thank you all for watching this video. Look forward for more.